Okay, welcome, folks. Welcome. You are listening to The Dark Side of Purgatory, the true reality of this world. I'm the hijacker. This is I think the 7th edition of The Dark Side of Purgatory. It is July the 21st, year of our Lord 2018. And I've got a special guest tonight. It's going to be far-reaching. It's going to be about the most important things. In this particular show, The Dark Side of Purgatory, there are no rules. In other words, we can talk about basically anything. And what I prefer to talk about is the most important things, the true reality of this world. If you don't know what the dark side of purgatory is, well, the Catholics, a long time ago, they came up with this concept of purgatory. And they go, well, you live your life, and then if you die if you're dying and you're not in a state of grace, so to speak, you still got another shot at getting to heaven, because you're going to go to this magical world called purgatory. Sometimes it's going to be pain, sometimes pleasure, but there you're going to be purified and tested, and then ultimately, once you get enough of the crap burned out that seems to be in every human being, then you can ascend to heaven. Well, recently the Pope just came out and says, no, there's no purgatory. We messed up on that one. But I put forth the thesis that we are in purgatory, that really where we're at, we're in a world that you can't even start to believe that we're in. We were in heaven at one time. We all know we did something wrong, and there's a reason why we're all here. And so this earth was created flat with a dome, a firmament over it that spins like a clock, the stars. And for our fate or part of our punishment is to be tested in these flesh incarnate bodies we call human beings, and we're put here alongside another flesh-type creature. Some call it the reptilians, human hybrids. Others call it the Canaanite bloodline, some the serpent seed line. But together, we're down here. And this is our purgatory. This is where we would be purified, and we would be judged on our actions. And that's what I like to go into and talk about. Well, tonight, I got a very special guest. It's going to be far-reaching. This guest, just a little bit about him. He's written 20 books. He's published over 50 of the ancient manuscripts, ancient writings. He's a publisher, a writer, a theologian, a defender of the faith, a soldier of Christ. And I actually got to take in a look. I looked it up in my Strong's Concordance, exactly what is an apostle. And I looked it up, and I think this guy's an apostle. An apostle is a commissioner of the gospel, or an ambassador of Christ, or one who is sent, set apart, in other words, sent purposely. I almost start to believe that there's some people that did not have to incarnate in the flesh, and for whatever reason they chose to. I almost think I'm one of those people, because this life has just been hell. Nobody would do this. Nobody would willfully do this unless they're obeying a higher power. Just no way. And so, without much further ado, let me just introduce you to Zen Garcia. He's also a radio talk show host. And the reason why I say I think Zen's an apostle is that some people's ministries, and I'm starting to look at this more and more, some people's ministries are local. Like you got a local pastor and he helps people and binds people up, buries people, gives the sermon every Sunday. And so their effect pretty much is in that community. But there's some people, they spread out. And then there's a few that actually affect worldwide, thinking and philosophy and understanding far, far outside their realm that they should be. Zen is one of these people through his publishing company and his books. He's basically bumping up against a lot of people in mainstream Christianity or churchianity. I don't know. It's almost take your pick. And they've come against him. Nobody probably has had more massive attacks. I actually have watched it over the years. Some people who are his friends, and they just no longer will mention him. So because he's pushing that, because he is finding what Jesus called, he's finding the old wine and the old wineskins Jesus says you don't put new wine in an old wineskin or it'll break. No, you pull out the old wine. And the type of things that he's publishing, we are now finding out that the 66 books of the Bible, okay, that's the canon, I'll give it to him, but there's a lot of other information, and it's so congruent, and it has that ring of truth that it's redefining really, really the world that we're in overall. But let me go ahead and just pull Zen in real quick. This is Zen Garcia. So Zen, hopefully you're there, correct?
I'm here, brother. I appreciate you, and it's always an honor to be with you and your listening audience.
Yeah, well, Zen, this is kind of far-reaching. I want to go everything from Mandela effect to mud fossils to the timeline that you think we're on. I want to really, because I have some hard questions about different things, and I wanted to just kind of pick your brain and kind of compare notes on how you see things and what you believe about certain things, because we're now coming in with the internet opening up. We are now all literally becoming like gods with a small g of knowledge. We can just see everything. And so I want to start with the timeline, because I remember, and I follow you closely, Zen. In fact, most of the stuff that you put on YouTube under Endeavor Freedom, I catch. Most of the stuff that you post, I make sure I listen to. Sometimes I fall asleep listening to it. I think, well, I can hold out this long before I go to sleep, and bam, and I end up waking up like a couple hours later to something, I don't know, some kind of strange video, which I don't do it anymore. If you sleep, people, go to sleep without any music or without anything in the background, because that's when God gets a chance actually to talk to us, is when we're asleep, actually. It's the only time he gets. But so a couple years ago, I caught you, and this was before the 2016 election, and so I heard you, and I remember somebody asking you, well, Zen, what do you think where we're at? Because, you know, you always say that we're in the end days, we're in the end times, the days of Noah, right before the end, and that we are that last generation. But you said back then, you were pretty glum, and you says, well, I don't think there's going to be I don't think we have more than 5 years, the way things are going. And, of course, we were looking at pretty much everything we're looking at now, except it's increased. The chip, AI, singularity, massive surveillance technology, just crazy stuff in the political realm, the economic realm, the numbers. But then I heard you the other night that you basically said that you've been basically running and calculating the Jewish clock, Jewish timeline, calendar, along with the 70th Jubilee that we're coming up on, or we just had, and then also we're coming up to 70 years of Israel being a nation, and then you started calculating all the different time periods, and you say, well, we know it's 6,000 years. So you basically said a couple of days ago that we were within basically a 10-year time frame, give or take a year or two. And so that's what I wanted to ask you about, Zen. Where do you think we're at, I mean, in the timeline, and also comment on whether you think, and there's some people, they swear by this, that the eclipse that we had August 21st, 2017, that went across the United States, in which you got to actually see it in its totality, the darkness. You were one of those ones that was able to see it. I saw it from Seattle, so it didn't get quite, I think we got like 80 or 90%. But then they say there's another eclipse, totality eclipse, that's going to happen in April of 2024, which is basically a 6.5, almost 7-year period. And so some people think that the eclipse that went across, and they tie it to the sign of Jonah. Believe it or not, when Jesus was talking about the sign of Jonah, it wasn't the 3 days and the big fish in the belly of the fish that Jesus was talking about, but there was an actual eclipse that happened, and that everybody back then in Jesus' day knew the sign of Jonah was a total eclipse that came across Nineveh. Anyways, they say the first eclipse that came through is that we were entering judgment, and then the second eclipse that comes through the United States, which is actually going to cross and create almost a perfect X, almost geographically perfectly in the center of the United States. And that second eclipse is we're going to be going from we are being judged to we have been judged. And so let me just get back to the timeline, Zen, and turn it over to you. Where do you think we're at as far as the timeline? And I mean, give us a feel to where. What are you thinking? What are you doing, Zen? What are you calculating? What are you doing with your life? Because you're a super survivalist in the sense that, of course, you're betting everything spiritual, which is the smartest way to survive. But you watch this stuff all the time. You've been blessed with a publishing ministry to write these books. You're literally bathed in all this stuff that most of us, we got a 9-to-5 job and we got our own hell and our own little petty lives to worry about, and we just don't even have the time. So what's your view on the timeline that we're in right now? Go ahead.
All right. Well, first, we have to equate that a day is as 1,000 years to the Most High God, and that what we see with regard to the Second World Age, that is a 7,000 year timeline. That there was a First World Age which has already come and gone, and that was what led to the earth becoming without form and void. That in the First World Age, after the war in heaven, the earth and the fallen angels were judged, and it became destroyed. It was created perfect, and to be inhabited, as it says in Isaiah 45:18, but it was destroyed. And so when you examine the Hebrew, you look at this particular passage, it becomes clear that the earth became a deserted wasteland and an indistinguishable ruin. I'm hearing an echo in the background. Do you guys hear it too?
No, I don't hear it, Zen. Let me just check. And it's not on the radio either. I've turned it on the radio. So
Okay.
It must be our producer. And in fact, he's probably clicked out now. Go ahead and test it again, Zen. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I still hear it, but as long as it's not on the air, it's all good. I'll deal with it. So anyways, as I was talking about, and I can actually bring it up so that we can go into it in greater detail, but it's very important to understand that there was a time prior to the 7,000 years that we are in now. And the 7,000 years that we're in now, it comprises the Second World Age. And these 6,000 years, and then the millennial reign, which comprises the 7,000 year period. Um, the 6,000 years are 120 jubilees. And I do believe that we are near the end of that 120th jubilee, and that makes up the fullness of a 6,000 year timeline, and that we're near what will be the millennial reign. And the reason I say that is because when you add up all the years, and even the the Jews, they believe that we're in the year 5778. But there is some time that is missing, and the reason I believe that we're in this final jubilee is because the jubilee, I think, is connected to even the nation of Israel, just as the blood moons and that came um, that the tetrad, the four blood moons that were associated to the recreation of the nation state of Israel in 1948, and also in 1967 when during the 6 Days War, and they recaptured Jerusalem and made it the capital of Israel. And then in 2017, we also had these four blood moons. And so I believe these years were very important. And also 1917 with the Balfour Declaration, which led to the recreation of Israel. And so 1917, I believe, was a jubilee, as was 1967. And then you add 50 years to that, and that brings us to 2017, which, for those that are familiar with scripture and the unfolding of it, we had the Revelation 12 sign of the virgin clothed with the sun, the moon beneath her feet, uh, with the child within her womb, and a crown of 12 stars, which
Yeah,
was
right.
the.
Right. Let me stop you, Zen. So it's the constellation he's talking about, Virgo, right, with the sun and then the moon at Virgo's feet, and it looks like it was Saturn or something that she was like being pregnant. But what my main point for interrupting you is what Zen's talking about with these blood moons and with this constellation. These are God things. These are not things that people can actually manipulate. Man can actually manipulate things like that. These are things that are beyond man's control. So when they line up like this, and there are unusual anomalies like the 4 blood moons, then you have to step back and you have to say, well, wait a minute, this means something. I mean, it's not like somebody's trying to make us think this or make us think that. So that was my point, and the reason we're interrupting you is that what you're talking about is God-initiated things that we have no control over. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. The scripture says that there will be signs in the heavens and upon the earth, especially in the great and the terrible day of the Lord. And there are specific signs that are mentioned, that the sun will be darkened, the moon will turn blood red, the stars will fall to the earth. All these different things are part of the unfolding and unlocking of the seals at the end of days. But before we get to that, and I will elaborate uh, on us being the fig tree generation, I just want to first bring it to light as to the the mention of the first and the second world age, and how it was that the earth had already been destroyed one time. And so, reading the passage in Peter, it says, knowing this first, that there shall come in the last days scoffers, walking after their own lusts, and saying, where is the promise of his coming? For since the fathers fell asleep, all things continue as they were from the beginning of the creation. For this they willingly are ignorant of, that by the word of God the heavens were of old, and the earth standing out of the water and in the water, whereby the world that then was, being overflowed with water, perished. But the heavens and the earth which are now by the same word are kept in store, reserved unto fire against the day of judgment and perdition of ungodly men. But, beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. The Lord is not slack concerning his promise, as some men count slackness, but is longsuffering to us word, not willing that any should perish, but that all should come to repentance. But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth also and the works that are therein shall be burned up. So this is telling us again, as to how the earth will be destroyed the second time, and that's with fire. That the first time it was with water, and it was drowned. And now we're not talking about the flood of Noah's day, because uh, the earth wasn't destroyed in that flood; it was just overflowed. But in the first destruction, it's called the Catabo, it was completely destroyed, so much so that it had to be recreated, reformed, and refashioned. And this is what we see in the verses of Genesis 1, 2, and onward after the earth became without form and void, which, as I said, in the Hebrew means that it became a deserted wasteland and an indistinguishable ruin. And so there was something that caused that. And it speaks to us in Scripture in many different places as to what and how that occurred. And so there's a portion in Jeremiah and also Ezekiel where it speaks about, and also there's in the Colburn Bible a scroll called the Scroll of Thosis, which makes mention of the destruction of Atlantis in the prior times, which everybody knows about the mythology and the stories of Atlantis, but we don't understand the timeline of when that occurred and how to incorporate it into the 7,000 years of the modern age and the what are the 7 days of the Lord. But this particular cataclysm occurred before the Second World Age in the last 6,000 years of modern history. And we can tell that by, well, I'll read this chapter from Jeremiah. It says, I beheld the earth, and lo, it was without form and void, which is exactly the same terminology which is used in Genesis chapter 1, verse 2. And so this verse in Jeremiah is connected to that particular passage. And it says, and the heavens, and they had no light. I beheld the mountains, and lo, they trembled, and all the hills moved lightly. I beheld, and lo, there was no man, and all the birds of the heaven were fled. So this was at a time when there was not yet any man, and man had not yet been created. I beheld, and lo, the fruitful place was a wilderness, and all the cities thereof were broken down at the presence of the Lord and by his fierce anger. For thus the Lord hath the Lord said, the whole land shall be desolate, yet will I not make a full end. And so when you understand that the fallen angels were here before modern humanity was cast down, that they were the ones that were responsible for creating much of what we see as the megalithic structure that is spread across the plane of the earth in all the different countries, and that they were built in similar megalithic, pyramidal, ziggurat, temple style. Um, that that's the reason we have what seems to be the a culture which is similar, spread wide across the earth. And again, it is this Atlantean fallen angelic culture which united all these people and which at that time had dominated over the antediluvian world. And we see that even in the Sumerian, the mythology that they worship the feathered serpent, the Anunnaki, which were these seraphic angelic beings. And they had a reptilian, but also had wings. So they were dragon like entities. And so when you understand that these were the angels that were cast out of the heavens on the second day, according to the second book of Enoch, he tells us in chapter 29 and 30 that they were cast out on the second day, that they were here before we were, and even before pre-Adamic humanity. And they were the ones that created all of these megalithic structures. And so this judgment was brought against them. And
Well,
so,
yeah, Zen, let me stop you there. So you're talking about the pre-Diluvian age. Is this why we're starting to see, and it's coming across everywhere now, to where I'm almost believing it. It was like sort of almost like flat Earth. You know, you get to 80, 90%, you just cannot believe it because it's so insane, and then you just get so much evidence, and you go, okay, it has to be. But we're starting to see these mud fossils and things like the Devil Tower. It looks like a giant tree, and it's got special type of hexagonic type structures that go all the way down, and it looks like it's been cut off. Mesas all over the earth that seem to have no rhyme or reason that they've been cut. Trees in the petrified forest where you can see this huge tree, and it's actually only a limb, but it's actually cut up, and the whole thing, like with a chainsaw, and the whole thing is petrified. So are you saying that this judgment that came to them, was there, because we know things are created by the voice of the spoken word of God, a frequency. So did he send forth a frequency out of these, and these giants are being found, partially part of mountains, huge skulls, Childress or whatever, he's in Africa, South Africa. He's standing next to a 3-foot, perfectly imprinted giant foot. And so we're talking mega giants back then, and that they're the ones that created these perfectly cut 100-ton stones like in Bellback, and they found some in Russia even bigger than that, just huge, off the coast of Japan, just giant. Each step is like 20 feet, and you got these divers that go way down, and they realize what they're looking at is a temple or some kind of great city. So is that what you're talking about? And what do you think that these mud fossils and these it seems like giant elephants and turtles? They're finding, stone snakes, which are just huge. Is that what you chalk up to the pre-Diluvian age? What's your take on that, or you don't buy any of these old ancient stone giant type things? Go ahead.
No, I absolutely believe that they were fossilized, and it wasn't just these titans or the giants of old, but it was also, very strange hybrid type of these seraphic beings, large mushrooms. They found fossilized dragonflies with wingspan of 6 foot long, cockroaches bigger than 100-pound dogs. I mean, everything was giant in the antediluvian age. In the scriptures, it tells us that even humanity had a lifespan of 1,000 years and had a much larger stature during those times. But then after the flood, the Most High brought judgment on not only humanity, and the fallen angels and their giant children, but reduced their lifespan from seeming immortal lifespan to 500 years, as it mentions in the book of Enoch. And humanity, their lifespan was reduced to 120 years. Like, for instance, Noah, he lived 900 plus years. His son Shem lived 600 years. And then by the time of Abraham, which lived also, during the time of Noah and Shem, his lifespan was reduced to 175 years. And so after the flood, the stature and the lifespan of humanity was reduced greatly, as was that of the giants.
Yeah, and Zen, do you account for the giantism? Because I know, and I got this from you, that the God didn't actually make the moon and the moon and the sun until like on the third day. But
fourth
do you think the fourth day? Do you think the giantism came because there was no dome over it, and the actual glory of God came down through the different dimensions of heaven, and that plants and people and everything was actually responding, being bathed in that light? Do you think that's what that would account for, these massive giants and stuff like that? Go ahead.
Well, we don't really know the exact atmospheric or the environmental conditions of what was going on at that time, but I don't just chalk it up to that. I believe that in the antediluvian age, that everything was of very much larger proportion, but that because the giants consider themselves to be strong and were proud in their strength, and because of that, um, did not accept or bow down to the authority of the Most High God, but believed in their strength and that of the magic that they had in worshiping their fallen angelic fathers and mothers. Um, that was one of the reasons why they were caught up in evil, and even the fallen angels. That was the reason why they rebelled. They had such power and such capacity and such capability as far as knowing the mysteries of heaven that they thought they could challenge the authority of the Most High God, their maker, their creator, when really they never ever had a chance. But yet they believed in their capabilities so much so that they led themselves away in delusion. And even the giants, the children that were born unto them, they also were very proud and very haughty and rebellious in their demeanor and warlike to the children of Adam, the seed of humanity. And that's why they were involved in cannibalism and the drinking of blood, and just involved in magic and evil and the abominations which were taught to them by their fallen angelic fathers.
Well,
Um,
speaking about their powers, and do you think that accounts for a lot of the high technology that we see now, a lot of these UFOs and anti-grav and high-tech lasers and technology? Do you think that they, because their brains had to be just like incredible? I mean, they were incredibly smart, and there's ancient stories. In fact, they find stuff all the time at the bottom of coal mines, even jewelry and stuff like that. Do you think that would account for what we're starting to see being unveiled now with a lot of this incredible technology? Do you think they had access to that? Go ahead.
I think the technology that they had access to was far superior than anything that we see in this day and age. And that what we see with the quick acceleration of technology and the capacity over the last, what is the last 70 years or so since the blooming of the fig tree. Because you think, again, with the end of the age, that Christ said that when you see the fig tree bloom, that this would be the generation that saw the second coming and also the end of the age. And so when Israel came to be a nation again, this was the indicator, this was the sign to the fallen ones that they had to step up everything and accelerate their agenda because time was short. And since that time, in this generation, we've seen such a quick acceleration of knowledge and technology and the revelation of it that um, a lot of what had been lost is now being rediscovered and being brought back to light. That's why it says in Ecclesiastes, there's nothing new under the sun. That which was is to be again. And, all of that is being recreated. And so I believe the fallen ones are recreating and leading humanity in such a way so that they can recreate knowledge that they had and capacities that they had in the antediluvian times.
Right, and so there's this. So we're in this timeline, with the the creation of Israel. We got the Jubilee. But now we're starting to find out as we come to the end that there are vast underground cities and networks, all kinds of vast, incredible technology. Supposedly now they got technology where they got some sort of microwave chemical laser, whatever the heck that means, where they went into California and they could just literally burn neighborhoods at will and leave all the trees around, not even touched. So is that, you think that this subterranean world, some say it could be as big as the surface world as far as population. I don't know about cities and tunnels and railways, bullet trains and that type of thing. But is that how they've been able to hide things? Do you think that when God actually told Satan, after the fall, onto your belly you should go, do you think what he was really saying, into the belly of the earth you shall go? And he kind of sentenced that these type of reptilian, serpentine type of fallen ones were kind of banished. What's your take on, in other words, Zen, how have they been able to hide from us? Are they hiding in the Antarctic? Where are they getting these ships from? Where are they getting, incredible things that once in a while we'll get a glimpse of? And is it below our feet? What is the construct of where the fallen ones now, who seems to be ruling over with with their hybrid children over the earth? Where are they doing all this? Where are they getting all this? What do you make of that? Go ahead.
It says in Isaiah 14, when Lucifer wanted to exalt himself above the stars of God and the clouds of God, and he says, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit atop also the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. It says, yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. And they that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee and say, is this the man that did shake the kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness and destroyed the cities thereof? And so God tells us that when Lucifer wanted to be like the Most High, and he tempted 1/3 of the angels of the Most High to join him in rebellion and in insurrection to try to overthrow God and the Son, that's when they were cast down and cast out. And again, in the book of Enoch, second Enoch, it tells us that this was on the second day. And so these were in very ancient times. And yes, so they were cast down into the interior of the earth. And as I bring forth in my Flat Earth and the Firmament trilogy, and specifically my third book of that trilogy, Paradise, the Sides of the North, and the Mount of the Congregation, that there are 7 levels to Sheol, Tartarus and Gehenna, all these different names for what is Sheol, which is where we get our American word, English word for hell. Just as there are 7 heavens, that the earth is the place where light and darkness come together. It is the meeting place for spirit and matter, for what is the invisible and the visible. And it is here on the earth that the spiritual hierarchy, along with the demonic forces of legion, are contending against each other for the souls of humanity, for those angels that are being born into the flesh, which is us. We are spiritual beings that are caught up in flesh form. but essentially we are immortal, angelic, bright-natured beings. We're just in a fallen state. And so this world is where we learn through the duality of good and evil, pain and pleasure, light and darkness. And so that's what this world really is all about, is determining whether we're going to be good or evil, serve light or darkness in the form of Christ or Satan. Those are the two polarities, the two extremes. And so the determination of whether one chooses to be good or evil, and that battle that wages daily within us, because the war in heaven is now within our hearts, within our minds, and within our souls. That it's those choices that we make over this lifetime that determine whether we will go on to an eternity which is salvation through Christ, or condemnation through Satan and through wickedness, or if we're going to be numbered with the elect. We can follow the broad path of destruction or the narrow way which leads to life. And those are the only two choices that we have. And we're making those choices with our every intent, thought, action, and way of being.
Right. Yeah, I got to thinking about it. I was thinking about my own soul the other night. I'm just looking back over my life and thinking, if I actually show up to heaven and for whatever reason God says, no, you missed the mark, and really there's only really one way. There's only one good way, one righteous way, which would be God's way. Any deviation from that, ultimately, one of the reasons why he let this whole thing play out on this earth is to basically show everybody, look, there's all these different ways you can go, but ultimately there is only one little spectrum way that is actually good and right, which would not harm the universe. And I thought to myself, well, as crazy as it might sound, if I didn't miss it, I would not want to disrupt God and further eternity by inserting myself if I'm not in that spectrum. Because ultimately, it doesn't matter if it's 1,000,000 years from now or 10 million. Ultimately, that offbeat that's basically in me would cause destruction. And I would rather have myself destroyed, annihilated, than actually mess up or cause confusion in God's eternity as it plays out. But anyways, let's get back to the timeline, Zen. So you added up all this. I heard you the other night. You went through and you from the days of Noah to the days of Abraham, and then Abraham to Jesus, and you added them all up. I heard the numbers, and then from Jesus to one of the emperors, and then from him all the way up to this date. And that's when you said, it looks like we got about 10 years. So are you saying that, and then you can break from what I'm saying, pick it up wherever you want, but are you saying that we have 10 years and that you think that what we're looking at is the book of Revelation, the 7-year period of that judgment will hit in 10 years? Or do you believe it's closer to the 2024 mark where you get the second eclipse that X out the United States? Where do you see where we're actually on the timeline, and what do you think we're dealing with before the actual start, the beginning of that 7-year period of tribulation? Go ahead.
Okay, well, again, this is the parable of the fig tree is what is most important in this particular passage and this understanding. And the reason this is important is because the apostles themselves asked Christ, what would be the signs of your coming, of your return, and of the end of the age? And people can go and study. It's the only place in the Bible where a bunch of particular incidents are listed out and given one by one after the other, and to tell you as to what would be happening during that time. And so people that study the end times study these three chapters in scripture greatly. One is Matthew 24, the other one is Mark 13, and the other one is Luke 21. Now I'll give you for instance, it says, um, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And he said, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am the Christ, and shall deceive many. You shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and you shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. But what is most important after you go through all of this, and it says that the gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, a witness to all the nations, and then shall the end come. But what is really critical is that he says, know ye the parable of the fig tree. And if you understand what the parable of the fig tree is, you understand when the end times are coming and when the last generation is. Because it also says, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should be no flesh left, meaning that if he did not return, everybody would die. And so, um, again,
Oh,
and
yeah, no, only.
let me,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
well, I was just gonna, it's important to, let me explain this parable of the fig tree and then come in. He says, now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my word shall not pass away. So he tells us in this, description of the end times about this parable of the fig tree. And so the question is, what is the fig tree? And there's a extra biblical text called the Apocalypse of Peter, where Peter asks him directly, and it's just like this Matthew 24. It's another gospel that is excluded from the canon. But in that gospel text, it tells us what the parable of the fig tree is. Peter goes to him and asks him directly, explain to us the parable of the fig tree, we know it not. And so Christ goes into a very lengthy description of how the fig tree is connected to the house of Israel and to the nation of Israel. And so what we see as occurring in 1948 with the regathering of the Israel as a nation, which, this is like uh, 2,000 years after it had been destroyed. 500 uh, BC it was destroyed, it was rebuilt and came together as a nation once again, then destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD, and now in 1948 it comes to be a nation again. And so we see that that was the blooming of the fig tree. And so that happened in our lifetimes. When Israel became a nation in 1948, which is also when we saw all of these tetrad blood moons, and in 1967 when they regained Jerusalem, and then in 2017, which was the 70th year anniversary, which in Psalms 90, verse 10, it tells us that a generation is 70 to 80 years. And so that's why when you add that 70 or 80 years to the timeline of when Israel became a nation in 1948, it brings us to 2018 for the passing of 70 years, and then 2028 for the passing of 80 years, which is why, in my opinion, we are within 10 years of the end of what is biblically described as that generation. And he said specifically that this would be the generation that saw all these things be fulfilled. And so that's why I believe that we are that generation and we are at the end of the age.
Right. And so, and I know you're aware of this, Zen, and I know you got answers for this, but we can go online and we can see a lot of very sincere Christians. They're going to say, wait a minute, we know the doctrine and the eschatology of what Zen is talking about, but they would counter saying, look, the nation of Israel was founded by the Rothschilds. They bought it. The Jews, supposed Jews, they weren't even real Jews. They're Khazarians, where the Jews actually admit the 13th tribe, and it was actually Khazarians who are not actually Jews genetically that actually founded it. And so therefore we're wrong about the people and we're wrong about the place. Or do you have the thinking that just like America, a lot of people thinking that America was founded on Christian principles by pilgrims and, we wanted this country to be for God, but actually now we're finding out all of these people were a lot of Freemasons, George Washington and the rest, who wanted to create another Atlantis. Most of them were of the serpent seed line, and that God actually ran a parallel. So even though the Rothschilds bought it, and they think that they constructed by their own hand, that God actually was using that in a parallel type of reality, to where you can actually claim the founding of Israel, the budding of the fig tree in 1948. So which camp do you fall in? Do you think it's a parallel, sort of like the United States, thinking we're a Christian country and when it's all Freemasons? Go ahead.
That's a really good question, and it's a really good point. And yes, I fully understand that the Rothschilds and the Zionists and it was through the United Nations, which is the seat of world government and the headquarters for what are these secret societies and the Illuminists, which serve under Satan, that they are a synagogue of Satan that brought together Israel as a nation and that fomented the whole Zionist movement. However, nothing occurs unless it is allowed to happen by the Most High God and fulfills his prophetic timeline. And way before all of this ever occurred in our lifetime and in this generation, it's been prophesied in scripture by Jeremiah, Micah, and others that this would occur in our lifetime with Israel becoming a nation again and the Jews being allowed to come back to their land. Even in my opinion, what we see in Ezekiel 36 and 37 as the vision of the dry bones, that in my opinion is a prophetic fulfillment of the Holocaust. And he describes even then in that vision, he tells Ezekiel, will these dry bones live again? And indeed, the Most High says that he would restore those dry bones, fill them with life again, and bring them back to their own land. And so that was, again, a prophetic fulfillment of what we see occurring after World War II, with Israel being created and the Jews being allowed to regather back to Palestine. But of course, we do know that this is part of the agenda for the synagogue of Satan. That even Albert Pike, in his vision in 1871, he said that the Second World War must be. Well, we'll pick it up on the other side.
Right, yeah, there we go. We got the break. So hang around, folks. We'll be back in about 2 or 3 minutes for the dark side of purgatory. Be right back, folks.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Okay, welcome back, folks. Welcome back. You're listening to The Dark Side of Purgatory, the true reality of this world. I believe this is the 7th edition. This is the second part of this show, and I just want to remind everybody that it's really important that you contribute to the station, revolution.radio. We have a platform here which is unlike any other. In fact, Zen's probably one of the only other people actually on the radio that go the full way. You want to talk Jews? Well, we'll talk Jews, the real story. You want to talk giants? You want to talk flat earth, dome, shapeshifters? In fact, I saw another one, Obama, in the first 10 seconds of this clip. Obama's in Kenya, and he's saying, he actually admits that he's the only person that's become president that actually came from Kenya. He actually admits that he was born in Kenya. Anyways, that first 10 seconds, you see his nose, some kind of frequency shape-shifting. You can find that stuff all over the web. It's not video anomalies or impressions or compression. These people, they got something in them. They're either part hologram or some kind of dimension that somehow it comes out of them, and that causes these anomalies that you see, just really strange. And that's one of the ways you can tell these people see it. But anyways, in this particular platform, with the dark side of purgatory, we can go the whole way. No gates at all. We go past all the gates. A lot of people have to have gates, or they'll get killed, like an Alex Jones. He can only go so far. People think that he should be saying a lot more than he's saying, but you start to affect 20, 30 million people, and you got to start thinking about what this synagogue of Satan that Zen was talking about is going to do to you. So anyways, contribute anything that you can. Get the archives. I think the archives are only like $5-6 a month, where you can go back and get all of the hosts, including Zen's program. He's on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, 8 p.m. Eastern, and that's his show on Revolution Radio called Momentary Zen. But anyways, go to revolution.radio, throw a few bucks in, put Hijacker's name on it, put Zen's name on it. I'm sure a lot of you that listen to Zen are listening tonight and say, yeah, I support these shows. I want more of it. Because Nighthawk does respond. In fact, just a couple of days ago, when I saw pretty much, I didn't think I could do any more as far as in the political realm. I says, well, I'm going to get off, and I'm not going to do the daily political show with Deacon John, which is at 2 p.m. Pacific time, Monday through Friday. Anyways, Nighthawk sent me a little note on Skype. Hijacker, are you quitting again? What's your email address? Because I'm going to send you all these emails. I'm not taking this blowback. So anyways, he thinks that people get upset with him. One night I missed because of my daughter's graduation, and people thought he threw me off the air. No, he did not throw me off the air. I had to go to this thing. It was very important. It's my only daughter, and she got a master's in nursing, and there was no getting out of that. So anyways, so go to revolution.radio, contribute whatever you can to the station, and put Zen or the hijacker's name on it. And we don't receive any funds from the station. We do this basically probably out of duty or love of God, and that's the reason why we do what we do. And so you can get a seed pack, you can get a silver coin. Just go to revolution.radio, look for the donate button, and then you can, any way you can give any kind of money, and then whatever money you do give, like if you get a seed pack, put Hijacker or Zen's name on it saying you support these shows. With that being said, Zen, who is actually a full-time writer, has written 20 books and has a publishing company. He's actually one of the guys that is and has to make his living through his words, through his work. I think he's writing now like 2 books at one time. He's got to be, because I remember just a few years ago, he was waiting to get his 7th or 8th book being published. And the publisher was just like, oh, it'll be a year. And I don't know what happened with Zen, but he got this brilliant idea, and he's published 50 books. And so if you're a publisher, if you're a writer out there, and you're looking for somebody to publish a book, he's got a real live publishing company, and he can expedite it. I heard Gary Wayne the other night with Zen, and Gary was talking about, well, I'm finishing up my book, and I should be able to get it out by, midsummer of next year, like a year. And Zen said, no, Gary, I've been through this with these publishers. It doesn't take that long. So anyways, if you're a writer out there and you want your book published, in fact, Zen, go ahead and give your contact information where people can actually send you any manuscripts or any old books. The other thing that Zen does, he seeks out old manuscripts. They don't have to be like Christian or English. He actually does transcribe. He's got people who knows how to switch. I think his daughter Joy she's able to do editing. She can transcribe things. So if you got something old out there, really old, if it's good enough, and Zen can get it up and print it and publish it, I'm sure he will give you some royalties from it. No question about it. But so with that being said, Zen, why don't you go ahead and give out your contact information, your email website, and your fallenangels.tv, all that kind of stuff. I don't have it right in front of me. Sorry about that. I'm not very good being a host. I should have all that in front of me. But anyways, you got the good stuff. Go ahead. Once you give your stuff out, Zen, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. You can contact me at www.sacredwordpublishing.net or .com, either one of those, and send us, question, commentary. If you are looking for any of the books that we have published, all of my personal books or the ones that we have edited, because we brought to light many of the ancient manuscripts, and all of our books are published in 14-point font, so they're larger, easier to see, and less stress on the mind and the eyes as far as, doing your research and your study. And a lot of people really appreciate that, especially those that are getting older like myself. When you do a lot of research and looking at smaller font, it gets tiresome and difficult to see. Your eyes will get crossed. But anyway, so we do publish in the larger font, and that makes it easier for people to do long-term study. And like I said, my 20 books that I have personally published are available there, as well as Dr. Joy. She's one of our authors, Diane Cover, and we do help others to publish their manuscripts. We're working on trying to put together some curriculum for those that are homeschooling their children with regard to some of these truths, as far as the cosmology, what occurred in the garden, the whole theme of the fallen angels, giants, pre-existence, all of these things, because those kind of teachings are not available, and that kind of knowledge and revelatory truth is not embraced by the mainstream and not spoken about by most pastors, preachers, those kind of church authorities, or those people that people look to for answer and interpretation on the gospel. And in my opinion, most of the world does not understand even the canonical material, much less the extra biblical. And that's why you see so much condemnation of the other ancient manuscripts. But just to give people an idea, we just published a few books on the dragons of old, the Celtic dragon myth, and the evolution of the dragon, the worship of the serpent, ophilatria, these kind of things. We have a couple books on giants coming out. I'm going to be republishing my Skyfall and Sons of God book. I'm working right now on the ancient prophecies of Christ. We just released an ancient book on cosmology called the Book of the Earth. And so these kind of things are available. The 3 books I did on the Great Commission, which put together all of the extra biblical texts on the Acts and the Gospels, and also the end times. The Great Commission 3 is specific to the fig tree generation, and it's about all of the end time manuscripts. Like the Book of Enoch talks about how even then he knew he was writing for a remote and distant generation. And so, as I said, we are that fig tree generation. And it is in our day and age, this generation, that all things shall be fulfilled, as Christ said. So all those kind of things are available. And we've got 2 really interesting books on giants coming out. One's called the In the Days of Giants, a book of Norse tales. Um, you know, these kind of things. We published a lot of manuscripts on flat earth and biblical cosmology, as well as the fallen angels, giants, ancient manuscripts, and other, the worship of the feathered serpent, antediluvian times, all these kind of things. And so people can just go to sacredwordpublishing.net and you'll find a wide assortment collection of these ancient manuscripts.
Right, and he's got the platform, so if some of you people out there have got some creative information, he probably can even do a cartoon book. There's different people that do different things. So if you got something out there, Zen's got the platform with that sacredwordpublishing.net to be able to do that. So anyways, go ahead and look him up and shoot him an email. And so Zen, so we continue with the timeline. We left it pretty much to where you said, okay, 2017, we had the 4 blood moons, the 70th year of Israel become a nation, taking Jerusalem, the whole works. And so you projected it out not more than 10 years, which would be 2028. Now we have this other eclipse coming, a total eclipse of the United States coming, which is going to form a cross, an X in the middle, and that's supposed to come in 2024 in April. And so are you saying basically that, also I wanted to make mention, we wouldn't even have the Book of Enoch, or the Book of Enoch is like a self-prophesizing book in the sense that, doesn't it say somewhere in Enoch, Zen, that this book would only become known right at the end? It would only be for the last generation that the Book of Enoch was actually written for, or would become known. Isn't there something on that? Go ahead.
Mm-hmm, right. Yes, and not only that, but other ancient manuscripts that it says in Joel that the Spirit would be poured out upon all flesh, and that all things that had been hidden would be revealed to light. And so again, we are that generation. We are seeing these things happen even now, um, that these kind of things are occurring now, and this is being fulfilled in our lifetime. And so, but I wanted to get back really quickly to what we were talking about with the creation of Israel and the fig tree generation and why this is so important. And I had mentioned Albert Pike and how the Synagogue of Satan has also been working to create Israel for a specific reason. But this is also aligned with prophecy because in Zechariah chapter 12, it says that Israel would become a cup of trembling amongst the nations. And so in Albert Pike's vision, which was released in 1871, it says that the Second World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences between the fascists and the political Zionists. This war must be brought about so that Nazism is destroyed and that the political Zionism be strong enough to institute a sovereign state of Israel in Palestine. During the Second World War, international communism must become strong enough in order to balance Christendom, which would be then restrained and held in check until the time when we would need it for the final social cataclysm. And in the Third World War, which is part of the end of the age, and what we see as the unfolding in Revelation, it says that the beast system, the 10 kings that give their power unto the beast for a single hour, that mystery Babylon, which I believe to be America, is destroyed in a single hour in a single day, and that this is part of what will be this Third World War. It says the Third World War must be fomented by taking advantage of the differences caused by the agentures of the Illuminati between the political Zionists and the leaders of the Islamic world, which is exactly what we see happening. The war must be conducted in such a way that Islam, the Muslim Arabic world, and political Zionism, the state of Israel, mutually destroy each other. Meanwhile, the other nations, once more divided on this issue, will be constrained physically, morally, spiritually, and economically exhausted. We shall unleash then the nihilists and the atheists, and we shall provoke a formidable social cataclysm, which in all its horror will show clearly to the nations the effect of absolute atheism, the origin of savagery and of the most bloody turmoil. Then everywhere the citizens obliged to defend themselves against the world minority of revolutionaries will exterminate those destroyers of civilization, and the multitude, disillusioned with Christianity, whose deistic spirits will from the moment be without compass or direction, anxious for an idea but without knowing where to render its adoration, will receive the true light through the universal manifestation of the pure doctrine of Lucifer, brought finally out in the public view. This manifestation will result from the general reactionary movement, which will follow the destruction of Christianity and atheism, both conquered and exterminated at the same time. So basically, what Pike is saying is that the Islamic extremists and the political Zionists, the Jews in Israel, that they would be the cup of trembling amongst the nations, and that this would lead to what would be the Third World War, which the communists and the nations of Christendom, which are, the Western nations, England and Canada, Australia, America, that they would be pinned against the communists, the atheists, China, North Korea, Russia, Turkey, the Gog and Magog states, um, Persia. All of these would mutually destroy each other, and there's specific reason why. It's to bring forth the Antichrist and to bring forth acceptance of what will be an alien God. Because, in my opinion, the strong delusion is connected to the revealing of the ancient aliens as our supposed creators and our benefactors. And that's the whole point of these three global wars. It's not just to bring forth a world government and a global order, but they want to bring forth the Antichrist and have everybody bow down to an alien God. And so that's the purpose. And I talk about, you and I, Jacker, we talked about this as well, that the whole reason for the deception as far as the flat earth and, the global deception and all of that is not just to keep people in ignorance or to lie to them and to keep them bow down to idolatry and idiocracy, but it's to prepare the stage for what is a return of the fallen angels as our creators. That the whole ever expanding universe establishes the belief that all the stars are suns and that all of them have planetary systems in orbit around them, and that they have people which could be thousands, even millions of years in advance of those that are here upon the earth. And understanding and accepting the heliocentric Copernican model, and also the whole evolutionary theory that we evolved as monkeys, and that there's other life that randomly came about because of evolution out there in the stars and in perhaps some of these galactic planetary systems elsewhere in another part of the universe, that these returning ancient aliens, that they were the ones that seeded humanity here upon the earth long ago, and that they're coming again to save us from ourselves. And so that's the whole setup. And that's why it's important to understand the deception, because when you know that the extraterrestrials or the so-called ancient aliens are nothing more than the demons, the fallen ones that were cast out of the heavens long ago and that have been exiled here to the earth with us, that they're not from out there, but that they're from the interior of the earth, then you won't get caught up in this deception. And believe me, it is the deception for which many people will bend the knee and bow and then accept the mark of the Antichrist.
Absolutely, Zen. In fact, I wanted you to weigh in on this because this has really got me mad. It's got me so mad that I can't hardly even talk about it anymore. That's how mad I am at it. But so you and I, Zen, we both know 1,500% that the Earth is flat. We pretty much know that there's some type of dome over it, that there's the stars that are in the firmament. In fact, you wrote a book about the stars actually being a certain class of angelic beings, the luminaries. So here's what really has got me upset, and I try to understand it, and then I try to put it in a political context, and I think, well, maybe that's what these people are doing. But all kinds of Christians, I'm talking about Christian leaders of ministries, even educational, even creation type ministries, Ken Hovind, L.A. Marzulli, Stan Deyo, lots and lots of all these Christians, Steve Quayle, all of them. They are smart enough to know they can go online, they can click a few buttons and figure out within a day or two, wait a minute, we've been lied to, there's no curvature, the stars don't move, the whole works. Why is it, Zen, that these Christians are maintaining this global, really it's the mother of all conspiracies. It's the one thing that's, in fact, it's so big that a flat earth, basically, the reason why they don't want you to believe it, you're right, it's to set up this global deception, but it is also to hide God. Because, I mean, the second greatest witness for God, besides, Jesus, Yeshua being the first witness, would be the earth itself. That is the second great witness. They're hiding it. But why are all of these these ministries, and why do they all got so much money and they're all so successful, but they're anti flat Earth. They attack, and they have to know, Zen. It's not. We're 3 years into this now. If somebody could have ripped it apart, they would have ripped it apart. What is it about these people that do they realize they're participating in setting up this global demonic deception where we're going to have this spaceship or whatever, and then these three beautiful beings, one black as coal with an afro, beautiful, perfect, a blonde-headed Aryan, all 10 foot, an Asian man with black hair and almond eyes, show up and say, we're your progenitors, and we're here to stop the wars. We seeded you a long time ago. Why is it that these Christian ministries and leaders are not? Why are they doing what they're doing? Go ahead.
In my opinion, people are so indoctrinated into the deceit, and they believe that the conspiracy, there's no way that all these people could be supporting a conspiracy this large, that it is beyond them and beyond their willingness to even examine it with open mind, that they would rather hold and toe the line with regard to the deception than examine and prove otherwise with regard to truth. Because as he said, it's very, very simple to determine that the earth is flat and that there's no measurable curvature. All one has to do is go to a lake or any area where you have 4 or 5 miles stretch of land and test for the curvature yourself. It 8 inches per mile inversely squared. The curvature is in a few miles supposed to be so great that it would be easily detectable. And yet we can see in every part of the plane of the earth, no matter where you are, it's easy to see a statue, a monument, an island, a cityscape, some kind of structural feature beyond what what should be possible according to the rate of determining the curvature of the earth. Um, we can see these things way past what should be possible, which proves that there is no curvature. The other thing, which is very easy to access and to come to realization upon, is that water must always be contained within a basin. It must be contained within a something that holds it. It can never adhere to a ball, and water will never take on a shape of and have a, a curved form. It always pools and collects together in whether it's a lake or a pond or stream, river, or whatever. It will always be flat and horizontal, which is why we have in the world what is called sea level. And then everything that is above sea level is dry land. It shows that there is one uniform level where all the waters of the world are contained in the basin of what is, a concave, with the oceans being held in this concavity, and then creating the sea level, and then all the land that is above the sea level is the dry land where humans and other ground creatures live. I mean, it's very simple to determine. And, there's no way that water can be contained on a ball. It will just leak over and run over and drip off. And so the whole idea of the Earth being globular, spherical, and that water is contained to the surface of the Earth by, gravity at the same time that birds and bees and butterflies and all that you know, can fly away and fly upward at any at will. I mean, it's just beyond lunacy. And
Oh yeah,
so,
well, yeah, Mark Sargent, he does this. He goes after all of these people that are professionals and all different types. Pilot. There's somebody who's run a flight school. A military ship commander. He's had naval missile commanders that they've come on his show and they go, look, we laser targets 80 miles away.
right,
He says everybody in the
which
upper
is
part of
impossible.
Right. Everybody in the upper part of the military, they all know, and they're just not allowed to say anything. If you take a look at flight maps, also it doesn't matter how high up you go, the land always comes up to eye level, razor sharp. I mean, when you can see Bumgardner when he opens the door up, you can see. In fact, have you seen the latest one, Zen, the rocket one, the 3 rockets that hit the dome? They have these rockets that go up, one from Arizona, one from I don't know where the other 2 are at, but they tried to disprove the one that happened in Arizona, where they fired a rocket up, and right about 73 miles. I mean, this rocket was moving, and you hear a thunk, boom, and it just stops, and it seems to kind of almost float down. So, anyways, these other people they've decided to do their own amateur rocket test, same thing, and so you got a clip, all 3 rockets going up. And right around 73 miles, thereabouts, it hit something, and just a cold, dead stop. But, yeah, but just getting back to all these different ministries, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's for political purposes. Maybe they go, well, I'd rather preach the gospel of the Lord Jesus Christ than to muddy the waters with this flat earth stuff. I don't know if they justify that. I don't know, Zen, but they're going to be guilty if they don't stop what they're doing. They're going to be guilty of actually participating in this great deception. And I do believe you're right. I do believe it is going to be something from the cosmos, because they've got way too much stuff invested in this whole globe Earth, heliocentric model. I mean, they got NASA, they got everybody. Even all nations are going along with it, including the Russians, the Indians, the Chinese. So this is the mother of all conspiracies. You might be right. It might be because it is so big that they can't believe it. But I'm almost starting to suspect. I don't know what to say, Zen. It's infuriating. But so we got about a half hour left, Zen. Where do you want to go from here? I wanted to, I got a couple of notes here about the Mandela effect, other things, but did you want to do any more on the timeline, or, really, what would be your words? If you actually did believe, and do believe, we got 10 years left, what would be your counsel? What would you tell people to do with the remaining part of their life besides get their soul right and accept Yeshua and come to the Father? Would you tell them if they're going to go into a ministry, they better do it now? Or, if you got something that you think that you want to do once you're retired, you better, what would be your advice for people as we go into this home stretch? And it's only going to get more difficult. We can see it now. It's just getting nuts out there. Soon there could be actually gunfire and civil war. The different political groups, attacking each other. It could get really severe. But what would you advise people for the next 10 years? Where should they really throw the energy of their life to make everything count? Go ahead.
I think the most important thing that people of this generation could do is to study prophecy. And the reason the study of prophecy is so critical is because prophecy confirms for you that God first, that there is a God, and that the prophecies that we have access to through the ancient manuscripts were inspired by the Most High God, and that these prophecies were given to us as these people that would be alive at the end of days in the last generation, that we would be the fig tree generation. And the prophecies are given to us in order to not only prepare us for those things that are coming, but that we can know through the prophecy that there is a coming judgment. Because that's the most important part to understand, that our actions, our behaviors, and everything that we do in this world, that all of those behaviors are important and have repercussion and are critical for determining our eternity through Christ, through Yeshua, as the way, the truth, and the life. That he came into the flesh as God, as the pre-existent, the self-existent one, into the flesh and fulfilled thousands of these prophecies which have been written into the scriptures and given to us over hundreds and thousands of years by hundreds and even thousands of prophets and patriarchs and apostles. And that all of this information has been available to us for very, very long time, since even the time that Adam was cast out of paradise. And that caused the fall of all of humanity and our being born into the flesh and coming into this world. That there's a higher reason for our coming into this world, and that it does not have anything to do with getting a good education and getting a good job so that we can be good tax-paying citizens, so that we can get, you know, uh, work and gain a lot of money so that we can buy a lot of things, and so that we can have a bunch of kids, and so we can pass on as legacy all of this substance, all of this wealth, and all of these material goods to them. That's an illusion. That is something that has, and even though that, yeah, that's an important part of life, it is not the most critical aspect of our coming to this world. That is just what we have been told. That is part of the indoctrination that we all receive, and that Satan has instituted as far as the American dream and the materialistic dream of coming into this world, that we seek to accomplish those kind of things. But that's not what fulfills soul. That's not what brings happiness. That's not what fulfills our mission and role for coming into this world. That in truth, in what is most real, is coming to understand who we are, why we are here, and what all of this is truly, really all about. Because remembrance is the most important thing. And remembrance is inspired by the study of Scripture, because God gave us His holy word in order to inspire us to such recognition. And not only to inspire us to recognition and acknowledgement that we are spiritual beings that pre-existed and now find ourselves in a fallen state of being in a fallen world, but that judgment is coming, and that the whole world is going to be judged by the returning Christ, that who gave us in prophecy what the signs of the end would be. And we are at the end of days. We are that generation which will see all things being fulfilled. And so that's the most important thing to come to knowledge on and to come to understanding upon, because your eternity is dependent upon that. And there's nothing more important than salvation of soul. Everything else is secondary and meaningless with regard to eternal life. If you do not have security in knowing that you will, through the Creator and through the Savior Messiah, live an everlasting and forevermore existence, you miss the entire point of coming into this world. If you're not secure in your eternity and you're not certain that when judgment comes, you will be numbered and counted with the elect, you're wasting your time. And you need to come to the knowledge that I'm encouraging to you to study, and to study the prophecy so that you can come to this certain knowing, the knowing that I have and that I am trying to share with all of you through the work that I do in publishing, in being a scribe unto the Most High God, in sharing all of this information. Because you can find truth in the gospel, and you can find, without a doubt, because he has told us for thousands of years, even in the vision that he gave to Daniel of the statue, Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the statue made of gold and silver, brass and iron, with the feet of clay and iron, the four kingdoms that would come to reign after Nebuchadnezzar's day: Babylon, Medio Persia, Greece, and then Rome, and then the 10 nation confederation of what we see as the beast kingdom at the end of days. This one prophecy spans thousands of years and is still being fulfilled even now. If you study that one prophecy alone, you will come to knowledge that indeed God has revealed himself and what is happening, what will happen, and what will occur in the end, so that you can be prepared and you can guarantee your eternity through him, because Christ has graciously offered and extended to all of us chance for everlasting life through him. And so that's the most important thing, and that's what I would encourage everybody to do with the time that they have yet remaining. Because again, if you do not have your eternity secured through him, you're wasting your time, and you need to do that thing um, first and foremost, because that is what's real, and everything else is an illusion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you're right. The way we actually grow up and the way we're actually taught to live in this world, and it's the more I look around, the more satanic it looks. The logos of the corporation, the Hollywood. I mean, we're literally bathed. I mean, Lucifer is the god of this world. It's just like, wow, once you start to actually take a look at it. But we're raised up to believe that, okay, I work hard and I do this, and then it's like a big stick that comes out from your forehead, like 10 foot, and like every 6 inches there's a carrot, and you're trained. Oh, I'm 16 years old. All I want to do, and you concentrate. All I want is that motorcycle. Get that dirt bike. You throw all your energy in your life, and then bam, you get that carrot. You got the dirt bike. Boom, you got something. Yeah. And so you're trained to only function and look what is the most important thing to you and your self-interest, when actually what Zen is talking about is don't look at what's most important for you and your self-interest. Well, who is the most important person in this construct? this universe, if you want to call it, and it is God. And so you have to start asking the question, well, what's most important to God? I want to do that. That's the most important thing. Well, you accept Yeshua, Jesus, as your only, God's only begotten Son, who died on the cross and was raised again. I think that makes him happy. I think that's pretty important. And then after that, once you start to look and saying, okay, what is the most important? What is the most important thing I can do with my life as far as the will of God? Then you build your life like that. Then everything changes. But absolutely right, Zen. That is the big game. That's the game that we're all playing. We're playing for our souls. We're playing for immortality. I mean, that's why we're here. Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. So with that being said, Zen, there's some anomalies I don't know what to make of, and it's almost magical stuff. And I know you've probably seen some of these magicians that seem to like they can walk up walls, they can float, they can pull bread out of their hand, they can do literally miraculous things, take water, turn water into wine, and then freeze it, turn it back to water, and make it ice. Just teleport, strange things. And then we also have this Mandela effect, where things have been changed. Little jingles and different things that you and I grew up with, we remember, way things were spelt, or certain words, certain movies, certain scriptures, the lion lays down with the lamb. What do you make of this otherworldly type? Because this is what I'm really starting to sense, that people are just going to go nuts. That there's things out there that are magical. I mean, almost to the point like, where Pharaoh throws his staff down and it turns into a snake. I mean, these people have that level of demonic, seems like, power. And then also the Mandela effect. So are we coming through a veil, or is there a dimension? How do they do this? How is this happening? Go ahead. What's your theory?
Well, in my opinion, it's the same thing as what the giants did in the antediluvian times. Now, these magicians, whether they are giving themselves up to demonic possession or what, I don't really know. I mean, I know also that, miraculous things can be done through the power of the Most High God and through Christ. But certainly, we know also that at the end of days, Christ tells us, be weary that thou be not deceived, because that there will be many Christs, and there will be many that come in his name and declaring that they are the Christ. And I think that the veil between the spiritual forces and acting upon this world is thinning, so that we see a bleed over, and that we are seeing demonic influence and also spiritual influence more and more in this world, and that as we get closer and closer to the end of days, we will see more and more of these kinds of events and anomalies and occurrences happening. And that has to do with not only the Mandela effect, but also with what people are able to do and the kind of things that they are able to um, manipulate energy. Um, and again, we have to be wary, because a lot of these so-called, magicians or whatever, they are openly showing on their logos, satanic symbolisms, or the eye at the top of the Illuminati pyramid. So they are showing what kind of forces they are aligned with. And certainly that, again, at the end of days, and this has been this way all throughout um, in the pagan times, and that through idols, that certain miracles have always um, been utilized by Satan in order to trap and to cause, people to give themselves over to what would be um, evil. Like the whole reason why people go into Satanism is to gain magical capacity and to be able to manipulate, to conjure. That even Solomon, who was a most righteous being, and that was the son of David, the most beloved of the Most High God, he became trapped and influenced by these demonic, these spiritual forces, and his ability to manipulate and to have a relationship with them. And he was seduced to the dark side. And so, that's what is happening to, in my opinion, those people that get involved with Satanism and Luciferianism, that they are being given spiritual ability and capacity which seems miraculous. And because of that, they are being seduced to the dark side. And then the other aspect of that Satan and the Luciferian, hierarchies have incorporated into them is seduction through lust, that they utilize sexual magic and orgies and fertility rites and festivals and things like that in order to seduce people and to cause them and influence them in those kind of capacities as well. And so most people, even the most righteous, the pastors, preachers, ministers, the most holy of people, that the one thing they will give themselves to indulge in is sexual pleasure. That they can be holier than thou in every other way, but when it comes to sexual deviance, they are willing and unable to keep themselves from falling into those kind of traps, which is, one of the reasons why so many political representatives are controlled and, they are trapped into um, having sex with kids, um, involving themselves in pedophilia. They get pictures taken, videos made of them, and then they are controlled forevermore. The same kind of indulgences of the whole Pizzagate and pedophilia gate and all that. I mean, we are seeing, and the knowledge is coming to light, that the political elite and industrialists and entrepreneurs and the most powerful judges and senators and even presidents, that they are all involved in uh, having sex with little kids and involving themselves in these sexual deviant orgies and all kind of abominable behaviors, and that Satan utilizes in the organization and the infrastructure of these secret societies to have those that take these blood oaths and that are willing to serve him, to they corrupt them in this kind of manner, in this kind of way. And like I said, even the most holiest people, um, they will give themselves up to sexual deviance and indulge in sexual pleasures when they may be holy in every other way.
Right. Yeah, I've got a little theory on that. I mean, it might be a little over the top on the radio, but there is something about the combination of sex, basically, that you actually anybody who's ever been baptized in the Holy Spirit knows what kind of bliss that is. So I'm almost thinking that one of the reasons why it just drives so many people crazy. In fact, like you say, pornography. They say like a quarter of the traffic is just people looking at porn. I mean, the whole sexual thing, and that's because there's something about the actual sex act that actually where you get that bliss, and that Yeah, that's actually like almost like a glimpse of heaven, and maybe that's what people are all trying to. They all want that. They all want to try to get that, little piece of heaven. That. But anyways, then my producer just told me that we got like 4 minutes, and so before I let you go, before the whole thing ends, can you just give out your information and include your other radio shows, because I know you do multi-purposes. And then the other thing, Zen, I wanted to hit you with, and I'm just kicking it around right now, but later on this fall, I was thinking about taking the Dark Side of Purgatory to like a nightly show where it would be kind of rotating host, different people that would be willing to come on. So if you can kick that around, and if you can come up with, a whole, because I know you got a whole group of people that you deal with that are also on the radio that would be willing to say, yeah, I'll take every once in a while I'll take a shift and do one of those episodes or editions of the Dark Side of Purgatory. But it's just something I'm just kicking around, whether there would be enough people, because I couldn't do it alone. It would have to be like a whole group of people, and know ever who's behind the door every night when the Dark Side of Purgatory. It could be somebody like Rob Skiba, or you got all kinds of friends that do all kinds of ministries, So anyways, think about that. But before we go, because now we're down to about 3 minutes, tell everybody where they can hear you on the radio, and then of course you got Endeavor Freedom on YouTube. But go ahead and give out your contact information one more time. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, I'll be glad to help with that in whatever way I can. I'm busy myself, but I'll help out where I can. You can find me on Facebook, Zen Garcia. Our company is sacredwordpublishing.net or .com. You can find our videos and all of the radio shows that I do. We produce them and release them under Endeavor Freedom and Zen Garcia on YouTube. I'm on Revolution Radio Wednesday evenings, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern. The name of the show is Momentary Zen. And then I'm on Truth Frequency Radio every Thursday night, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. And the name of that show is Secrets Revealed. And so you can find, I released all of our the links to all of my guest appearances. Like tomorrow night, I'll be on Tribulation Now. I'll be a guest from 9:30 to 11:30, and will be the next Sunday as well. Have been for the past 4 Sundays. But so I do a lot of guest appearances, and if you want to keep up with all of that, you can do that at Zen Garcia on Facebook. And then, like I said, my shows are Wednesday and Thursday evening, and I link and release links for those on Facebook as well. But we release the archives on Endeavor Freedom and Zen Garcia on YouTube.
Yeah, and I get, like I said, I get most of my information from you, Zen, on that. So anyways, it was a great show, Zen. God bless you. Thank you for coming on. I think the Spirit really spoke. I mean, this was a really great show. You'll probably throw this up on YouTube too, which would be great.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Zen. Well, God bless. And for everybody out there, this is the Dark Side of Purgatory. I'm the hijacker. Have a good night. God bless. And remember what Zen said. What's the most important? Get ready for it. So God bless. A hijacker. Over and out.
Aloha. Good night.
Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.